The rain hammered against the cracked pavement as Diana Graves counted the last coin in her palm, knowing it would decide whether she slept on a warm floor or froze beneath a bridge. She stood outside the Crimson Haven Inn, water streaming down her face, her clothes soaked through to her skin. The building rose before her like something from another century, all dark stone and arched windows, wrought iron gates that seemed to whisper warnings. But the glow from within promised warmth, and Diana was desperate enough to ignore the way her instincts screamed at her to run. 3 months ago, she'd had an apartment, a job, a life that made sense. Then her mother's medical bills had consumed everything, followed by her mother's death, followed by the eviction notice that came too fast for Diana to stop it. The city had chewed her up and spat her out onto these rain-slicked streets, and now she had 1 coin and nowhere left to go. She pushed through the heavy wooden door. The interior took her breath away. Rich velvet curtains the color of blood-framed windows that stretched toward impossibly high ceilings. Candelabras burned with actual candles, casting dancing shadows across marble floors, so polished they reflected like mirrors. Everything gleamed with old money and older secrets. Behind an ornate desk stood a woman whose beauty was almost painful to look at, pale skin that seemed to glow in the candlelight, hair like freshly fallen snow cascading past her shoulders. Her eyes were the palest blue Diana had ever seen, almost colorless, and they fixed on Diana with an intensity that made her want to apologize for existing. "We don't accept vagrants," the woman said, her voice carrying the faintest accent Diana couldn't place. "I can pay." Diana stepped forward, her shoes squelching water onto that perfect floor. She held out her coin, the metal catching the light. "I know it's not much, but it's all I have. Please, just 1 night. I'll sleep anywhere, a closet, the floor. I don't care. I just need to be somewhere dry." The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those pale eyes. She reached for the coin, her fingers cool as they brushed Diana's palm. This wouldn't cover even an hour in our establishment. Diana's heart sank. She'd known it was a long shot, but hearing it said aloud made the reality crash down around her. "Please," she whispered, "I don't have anywhere else." "Seraphine." The voice came from the shadows at the top of the grand staircase, deep and commanding, the kind of voice that made kingdoms fall and empires rise. "Let her stay." Diana looked up and forgot how to breathe. He descended the stairs like a king approaching his throne room, each step deliberate and graceful. Tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in black that somehow made the darkness around him seem pale in comparison. His skin was alabaster white, flawless and luminous, and his hair fell in waves of pure silver white past his shoulders. His features were sharp and aristocratic, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that looked carved from marble. But it was his eyes that held her captive, deep crimson, the color of fresh blood, ancient and knowing and utterly inhuman. Every instinct in Diana's body screamed vampire. "My lord," Seraphine said, bowing her head, "she cannot pay. I'll cover her expenses." He reached the bottom of the stairs and moved toward them with that same impossible grace. "Give her the coin back." "But all of it." His eyes never left Diana's face. "Everything in her pocket. I want her to have it all back." Seraphine's jaw tightened, but she placed the coin back in Diana's palm. Then, to Diana's shock, she pulled out a leather purse and began counting out more coins, far more than Diana had possessed in months. "That's too much," Diana protested, even as her fingers closed instinctively around the money. "I can't accept this." "You can, and you will." He stood close enough now that Diana could smell something rich and intoxicating, old books and expensive wine, and something darker she couldn't name. "I am Draeven Volkov, and this is my establishment. You are my guest, and my guests want for nothing." "Why?" The word escaped before Diana could stop it. "You don't know me. Why would you help me?" Something flickered across his perfect face too fast for Diana to read. "Perhaps I see something worth protecting. Seraphine, prepare the Moonstone Suite." "The Moonstone Suite?" Seraphine's voice rose slightly, the first real emotion she'd shown. "My lord, that's your private wing." "I'm aware." Draven's tone allowed no argument. "She'll be safest there." Diana's head spun. "I don't understand what's happening." "You're cold and wet and exhausted," Draven said, his voice gentling slightly. Understanding can wait until you're warm and fed. Come, he offered his hand. Diana stared at it, those long, elegant fingers, that impossible white skin. She should run. Every rational part of her brain screamed that she should take the money he'd given her and run as far and fast as she could. Vampires were dangerous. Everyone knew that. They were predators who saw humans as prey, powerful beings who lived in their own hidden world and occasionally surfaced to feed. But his eyes held something she hadn't seen in so long, genuine concern. And Diana was so tired of being alone. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cool but not cold, and he led her up the grand staircase. The inn seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, corridor after corridor lined with closed doors. Paintings hung on the walls, old masters, Diana realized with shock, originals that belonged in museums. Sculptures stood in alcoves. Everything whispered of wealth and age and power. "How long have you owned this place?" Diana asked, needing to fill the silence. 200 years, give or take a decade." Draven glanced back at her, a slight curve to his lips. "I lose track sometimes." "And you're really a vampire." "I am the Vampire King, actually, though I prefer to keep that title quiet in mortal circles. It tends to cause panic." Diana's steps faltered. "The Vampire King, as in ruler of all vampires?" "In this region, yes. There are others in different parts of the world, but the eastern seaboard belongs to me." He said it so casually, as if discussing the weather. "Does that frighten you?" "Honestly, I'm too tired to be properly frightened. Ask me again when I've slept." That earned her a genuine smile, and Diana's breath caught at the beauty of it. His fangs showed slightly sharp and white and deadly, but somehow that only made him more magnificent. They reached a set of double doors carved with intricate moon phases. Draven pushed them open, revealing a suite that made Diana's eyes widen. The main room was larger than her entire old apartment had been, decorated in silver and deep blue. Enormous windows looked out over the rain-soaked city. A fireplace tall enough to stand in crackled with warm flames. Plush furniture invited her to sink into it and never leave. "The bedroom is through there," Draven said, gesturing to another door. "The bathroom is stocked with everything you might need. I'll have food sent up." "Why are you doing this?" Diana turned to face him fully. "And don't say you see something worth protecting. That's not an answer." Draven was quiet for a long moment, his crimson eyes studying her face as if memorizing every detail. "When you're as old as I am, you learn to recognize rare things. You walked into my establishment with nothing but a single coin and more pride than I've seen in mortals who own mansions. You didn't beg. You didn't grovel. You simply asked, directly and honestly, for what you needed. That intrigued me. So this is just curiosity? For now?" He moved toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest, Diana Graves. We'll talk more when you're recovered." "How do you know my name?" He tapped his temple. "Vampire hearing. You'd be amazed what we pick up. Sleep well." He left, the doors closing softly behind him, and Diana was alone in more luxury than she'd ever experienced. She should be suspicious. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt a strange sense of safety, as if those doors were a barrier between her and every bad thing that had happened in the past 3 months. A soft knock came, and a young man entered with a covered tray. He had the same pale skin and white hair as Seraphine, the same ageless beauty, though his eyes were a softer amber. Another vampire. He set the tray on a low table, bowed slightly to Diana, and left without a word. Under the cover, Diana found soup that smelled like heaven, fresh bread still warm from the oven, fruit that looked impossibly perfect, and a pot of tea. She ate mechanically at first, then with increasing hunger, as her body remembered what real food tasted like. The warmth spread through her, pushing back the cold that had settled into her bones over weeks of sleeping in shelters and under bridges. When she finished, she explored the bedroom. The bed was enormous, covered in silk sheets and thick blankets. The bathroom featured a tub big enough to swim in. She filled it with hot water that seemed to flow endlessly, adding oils from crystal bottles that made the room smell like lavender and vanilla. The bath nearly made her weep with relief. She scrubbed away weeks of grime and fear, washed her hair 3 times, and finally emerged feeling almost human again. Plush robes hung on hooks. She wrapped herself in one and padded back to the bedroom. Someone had laid clothes on the bed while she bathed. Simple, but well made. Soft pants, a sweater that looked like it cost more than her old monthly rent, undergarments still in packaging. Everything in her size. Vampire hearing, she thought. He probably knew her measurements just from looking at her. She dressed and was about to climb into that magnificent bed when another knock sounded. This time when she opened the door, Draven himself stood there, changed into different black clothes, more casual but no less elegant. "I hoped you'd still be awake," he said. "May I come in?" Diana stepped back, suddenly hyper-aware that she was alone with the Vampire King in his private quarters. He settled into one of the chairs by the fire with unconscious grace, gesturing for her to take the other. "Tell me how you ended up with only a single coin," he said. "Why do you care?" "Indulge me." Diana sat, drawing her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. Something about the firelight and the late hour made the truth easier. "My mother got sick. Cancer. It came on fast and mean, and the treatments were expensive. I used everything I had, savings, credit cards. I sold everything I owned. She died anyway, 3 months ago. I couldn't pay rent. My landlord evicted me before I could find another job. The shelters are all full or unsafe. I've been surviving on the streets, trying to save enough for a room somewhere. But it's hard to get work when you don't have an address or clean clothes." She met his eyes. "That coin was the last of what I panhandled today. I chose a warm night over food because I thought it might be my only chance. Your mother was fortunate to have such a devoted daughter. For all the good it did her," Diana's throat tightened. "I couldn't save her. I couldn't even keep a roof over my own head afterward. Grief is not measured in success or failure. You fought for her. That matters." "Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I traded everything for nothing." Draven leaned forward, his crimson eyes intense. "You traded everything for love. That is never nothing." The gentleness in his voice broke something in Diana. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. All the grief and fear and exhaustion she'd been holding back, finally overwhelming her defenses. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. She felt him move, sensed him kneeling beside her chair. His hand touched her shoulder, cool and steady. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I don't usually fall apart like this." "You're safe here. You can fall apart if you need to." And she did, crying until she had no tears left, while the Vampire King stayed beside her and offered silent comfort. When she finally quieted, he produced a handkerchief from nowhere actual cloth, embroidered with his initials in silver thread. "Better?" he asked as she wiped her face. "Marginally," Diana managed a watery smile. "This is probably the worst first impression I've ever made." "On the contrary, I find your honesty refreshing. Most people put on masks in my presence, either trying to impress me or terrified I'll kill them. You're just being human." "Should I be terrified you'll kill me?" "No, you're under my protection now. That means something in my world." Diana studied his face in the firelight. "What exactly does that mean, your protection?" "It means no vampire in this region would dare harm you. It means you have a place here as long as you want it. It means I will stand between you and anything that threatens you." He said it simply, as if promising the sun would rise. It's a sacred bond in vampire culture. Once given, it cannot be taken back lightly. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Draven was quiet for a moment. "Do you believe in fate, Diana?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Why?" "I have lived for over 300 years. In that time, I have met thousands upon thousands of humans. Most pass through my awareness like rain through air, present but unremarkable. But occasionally, very rarely, someone catches my attention in a way I cannot explain. Something in their soul calls to something in mine." His eyes held hers. "You are one of those rare ones. I knew it the moment I sensed you enter my establishment." Diana's heart hammered. "That's impossible." "Is it? I can hear your heartbeat from here. I can smell your unique scent beneath the soap and shampoo you used. I could tell you that your eyes have 3 distinct shades of brown, that you have a small scar on your left wrist from what looks like a childhood accident, that you bite your lip when you're thinking. I notice everything about you, Diana Graves, and I cannot explain why, except that something in my blood recognizes you." "That's insane," Diana whispered, but she couldn't look away from him. Perhaps, or perhaps the universe occasionally grants even immortals a gift. He stood smoothly. You need sleep. We can discuss this more tomorrow. Wait. Diana rose as well. If I'm under your protection, does that mean I owe you something? Because I should know what I'm agreeing to. You owe me nothing. Protection is freely given, not a transaction. Everyone wants something. I want you to rest and recover. Beyond that, he moved toward the door. I want to know you better, to understand what made you the woman who would trade her last coin for shelter rather than food. To see if this connection I feel is real or the fancy of an old vampire who has lived too long alone. At the threshold, he glanced back. But those are wants, not demands. You may refuse them all and still keep my protection. Good night, Diana. He left before she could respond, and Diana stood alone in the beautiful room, her mind spinning. This was madness. Vampire kings didn't take interest in homeless human women. Protection bonds weren't given out on whims. Yet she couldn't deny what she'd felt when Draven looked at her, that strange pull, that sense of recognition, as if her soul had been waiting to meet his. She climbed into the enormous bed, expecting to lie awake for hours. Instead, she fell asleep within minutes, deeper and more peacefully than she had in months. Diana woke to sunlight streaming through windows she could have sworn had been dark, and the smell of fresh coffee. For a disoriented moment, she thought the previous night had been a dream. Then she saw the elegant room around her, and reality settled back into place. A tray sat on the bedside table, coffee, pastries, fruit, and a note in elegant handwriting. Breakfast, clothing in the wardrobe, join me in the library when you're ready, 3rd floor, West Wing, D. The wardrobe held more clothes, all clearly meant for her. Jeans that fit perfectly, soft shirts, a leather jacket that made her feel powerful just putting it on. She dressed quickly, braided her still damp hair, and ate while trying not to think too hard about what she was doing. Finding the library proved easier than expected. A vampire servant saw her wandering the halls and simply pointed. The room took her breath away when she entered. 3 stories of books climbed toward a domed glass ceiling. Rolling ladders provided access to higher shelves. Reading nooks tucked into corners invited hours of quiet contemplation. Draven sat in a pool of shadow beneath an overhang, well away from the shafts of sunlight. He looked up as she entered, and his face lit with something that might have been relief. You stayed, he said. Did you think I'd run? I thought you might wake up and realize accepting help from the Vampire King was unwise. Diana crossed to him, noting how he remained carefully in the shadows. The sunlight, it really does hurt you. It would kill me if I stayed in direct light too long. Most of us can tolerate brief exposure, but it's painful and weakening. Old vampires like myself are more sensitive. He gestured to the chair across from him, positioned in the shadow. Please, sit. She did, tucking her feet under her. I have about 1,000 questions. Ask them, I'll answer what I can. Why do you run an inn if you're a king? Don't you have a palace or something? I have the estate beneath the city the old catacombs converted into living spaces for my court. But I've always preferred the surface world. This inn serves as my public face, a way to interact with both mortals and vampires without the formality of court. He poured her tea from a service that must have been set out earlier. It also gives me something to do. Immortality can be tedious without purpose. How old are you really? 347 years. I was turned during a war I no longer remember the name of, by a vampire who thought my tactical mind would be useful. I outlived my maker and most of my generation. Diana accepted the tea, marveling at how normal this felt. Do you kill people to feed? No. There are blood banks, willing donors, and synthetic options now. Killing is forbidden in my territory unless in self-defense. I enforce those laws strictly. His expression darkened slightly. Not all vampires agree with my methods. Some of the old ones believe humans are cattle. We've had conflicts over it. Are you in danger? Always, to some degree. Leadership means making enemies. He met her eyes, which is one reason I wanted to speak with you this morning. My protection extends to you, but it also may make you a target. Those who oppose me might see you as leverage. Fear flickered through Diana, but she forced it down. Is that why you put me in your private wing? To keep me safe? Partially. Also because I wanted you close. He said it without embarrassment. I meant what I said last night. There's something about you that calls to me. I've never felt anything like it. I felt it too, Diana admitted. When you came down the stairs, it was like recognition. Like I'd been waiting for you without knowing it. Draeven's eyes blazed crimson. Diana, I need you to understand what you're saying. In vampire culture, that kind of recognition is rare and significant. We call it the blood call. It's a bond that forms between souls, sometimes between vampires, occasionally between a vampire and a human. It suggests compatibility on a level deeper than mere attraction. Compatibility for what? Everything. Partnership, companionship, love, if we're fortunate. He leaned forward. I'm not proposing anything we've barely met, but I want you to know what this could become, so you can choose whether to pursue it or walk away now. Diana's pulse raced. You're talking about a relationship between a homeless human woman and the vampire king. I'm talking about two people who might be meant for each other, regardless of their circumstances. He held her gaze. I can give you anything material you need, money, housing, security. But I cannot manufacture connection. That exists or it doesn't. I believe it exists between us. The question is whether you're willing to explore it. Every rational part of Diana's brain screamed that this was too fast, too intense, too impossible. But her heart remembered the safety she'd felt in his presence, the way he'd stayed beside her while she cried, the genuine care in his voice, and beneath it all, that pull, that sense that she was exactly where she needed to be. I want to explore it, she said, but I need time to adjust. This is all happening so fast. Then we'll take time. You may stay here as long as you wish, no obligations. Get your strength back. Let me show you my world. We'll see where it leads. He smiled slightly. Though I should warn you, I am not skilled at casual relationships. If we pursue this, I will be intense about it. Vampires love with the same passion we do everything else. Intense I can handle. What I can't handle is being lied to or manipulated. You have my word I will always be honest with you, even when the truth is difficult. A comfortable silence fell between them. Diana sipped her tea while Draven watched her with those ancient knowing eyes. Finally, she asked, what do we do now? Now I show you the rest of the inn, if you'd like. Introduce you to some of my people. Let you decide if you can truly tolerate living in a vampire establishment. Your people won't resent a human in their space. Some will. Others will be curious. A few will become your friends if you let them. He stood, offering his hand. I won't pretend there won't be challenges, but I'll face them with you. Diana took his hand, letting him draw her to her feet. His touch still sent electricity through her, that connection sparking between them. Lead the way, then. Let's see what I'm getting into. The tour lasted hours. Draven showed her the public rooms, dining halls decorated in velvet and gold, parlors where vampires gathered to socialize, a music room with instruments from across centuries, the kitchens, surprisingly modern, where human staff prepared meals for the few mortal guests and blood preparations for vampires. Guest rooms ranging from simple to extravagant, each decorated in different historical styles. They passed vampires in the halls, all with that same pale skin and white hair, those ageless faces and otherworldly grace. Some nodded respectfully to Draven. A few looked at Diana with open curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. She held her head high, refusing to be intimidated. In a training room that looked like a medieval armory, they found two vampires sparring with swords that sang through the air. Both stopped when Draven entered, bowing low. My lord, said one, a woman with hair that fell to her waist and eyes like chips of ice. We didn't expect you. Lucretia, Constantine, this is Diana Graves. She's under my protection and will be staying in the Moonstone Suite. Lucretia's eyebrows rose. The Moonstone Suite? That's unprecedented, my lord. Many things about Diana are unprecedented. Draven's tone allowed no argument. Spread the word among the court she is to be treated with the respect due to someone under royal protection. Any violation will answer to me personally. Constantine, a younger vampire with a warrior's build, studied Diana with less hostility than interest. Can she fight? I've taken a few self-defense classes, Diana said, refusing to let Draven speak for her. Street fighting mostly learned the hard way, nothing formal. She's been surviving on the streets, Draven said quietly. Alone and unprotected. I'd say that requires its own kind of strength. Lucretia's expression softened slightly. The streets are dangerous for humans. You were fortunate to find your way here. Or fated, Constantine added, his eyes knowing. We've heard rumors of a blood call, my lord. Is it true? Draven's hand found Diana's lower back, a protective, possessive gesture. That's between Diana and myself. Of course. Forgive my curiosity. But Constantine's slight smile suggested he'd gotten his answer. If the lady wishes to learn proper fighting, I'd be honored to teach her. One should always know how to defend what's precious. I'd like that, Diana said before Draven could refuse on her behalf. When can we start? Tomorrow morning, if you wish, early before the sun grows too strong. They left the training room with Constantine's offer echoing in Diana's mind. Draven was quiet as they walked, his hand still resting on her back. You don't have to learn to fight, he said finally. I'll protect you. I know you will. But I spent months being helpless, having things happen to me that I couldn't control. I don't want to be helpless anymore. She looked up at him. Is that okay? His expression gentled. It's more than okay. I admire your strength. He guided her toward another staircase, this one leading down. There's one more place I want to show you. They descended deep beneath the inn, past the guest floors and the public spaces, into older sections carved from stone. The air grew cooler, the architecture more ancient. Finally, they reached a massive door bound in iron and covered in symbols Diana didn't recognize. This is the entrance to the catacombs, Draven explained. My true home and the seat of my power. I've never brought a human here before. Why are you bringing me? Because if we're to explore this connection, you need to see all of me, not just the civilized innkeeper, but the king. He pressed his palm against the door, and it swung open silently. Stay close to me. Some of my court can be traditional about humans. The catacombs were vast and breathtaking. Massive chambers with vaulted ceilings connected through elegant archways. Bioluminescent moss provided soft blue-green light, supplemented by torches that burned with flames that never seemed to consume their fuel. Ancient tapestries depicted vampire history in rich detail. Modern technology blended seamlessly with medieval architecture, computers tucked into stone alcoves, electricity humming through walls that had stood for centuries. Vampires moved through the halls with purpose, some in modern dress, others in clothing from different eras. All stopped when they saw Draven, bowing or curtsying with practiced grace. Their reactions to Diana ranged from curious to hostile, but no one dared speak against Draven's obvious claim on her. They entered a throne room that made Diana's breath catch. The ceiling soared 50 feet high, painted with stars that seemed to actually move and twinkle. The throne itself was carved from a single piece of black stone, veined with silver that caught the light. Draven led her up the dais, and to her shock, he sat and pulled her down to sit on the arm of the throne. The doors opened, and a group of elaborately dressed vampires entered. Their leader, a male with hair like spun platinum and eyes the color of fresh blood, stopped short when he saw Diana. What is the meaning of this? His accent was thick, Eastern European, and his tone dripped disdain. A human? In the throne room? Seated on your throne? Diana, this is Vladislaus, one of my inner council. Draven's voice held a warning edge. Vladislaus, you will show respect to Diana Graves. She is under my protection. Protection is one thing. Flaunting her before the court is quite another. Vladislaus moved closer, his movements predatory. The others already whisper, my lord. They say you've gone soft, that you place human life above vampire interests. Then the others may bring their concerns to me directly, rather than whisper like cowards. Draven's power filled the room, making the air thick and heavy. And you will remember who sits on this throne. The other vampires who'd entered with Vladislaus backed away, but Vladislaus held his ground. I remember perfectly. I also remember when you cared about our kind more than mortal pets. Diana stood, anger overriding fear. I'm not a pet, Vladislaus laughed, the sound cruel. And it speaks. Tell me, human, do you truly believe you mean anything to him? You're a momentary fascination, a meal he's playing with before he feeds. Enough. Draven rose, and the temperature in the room dropped. You overstep, Vladislaus. Apologize to Diana or face the consequences of your disrespect. I will not apologize to food. What happened next occurred faster than Diana could track. Draven moved a blur of speed and power, and suddenly Vladislaus was on his knees, Draven's hand wrapped around his throat. You forget yourself, Draven said, his voice deadly quiet. I am not merely your king by title. I earned this throne through strength. Shall I remind you? Vladislaus struggled, but Draven's grip was unbreakable. The other vampires watched with wide eyes, no one daring to intervene. She is mine, Draven continued, my blood call, my chosen. Attack her with words or deeds again, and I will end your existence. Am I understood? Yes, Vladislaus gasped. My lord, I understand. Draven released him, and Vladislaus collapsed to the floor, coughing. Get out, all of you. Council is dismissed until I call for you again. They fled, Vladislaus staggering after them, and Diana was left alone with Draven in the enormous throne room. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said. Don't be. I needed to see it. Diana moved to stand in front of him. You called me your blood call, in front of your whole council. I did. It's true, and they needed to know. He looked down at her. But I've also just made you a target for anyone who opposes me. Vladislaus isn't alone in his beliefs. Many of the old ones think I've become too progressive, too friendly toward humans. Claiming a mortal as my blood call will only fuel those fires. Then maybe we should stop, before someone gets hurt. Diana. He cupped her face in his cool hands. I have lived over 300 years. I have fought in wars, overthrown corrupt kings, built an empire from nothing. I have never not once felt what I feel when I look at you. I will not give that up because old vampires cling to outdated hatred. Even if it means war with your own people. Even then, though I hope it won't come to that. He kissed her forehead gently. Let me handle my court. You focus on healing and growing strong. That's enough. But Diana couldn't shake the worry that had settled into her bones. She'd seen the hatred in Vladislaus's eyes, the way the other vampires had looked at her. Love across species was complicated enough without adding vampire politics to the mix. Over the following days, Diana fell into a routine at the inn. She trained with Constantine every morning, learning sword work and hand-to-hand combat. The vampire was a patient teacher, and his respect for her grew as she proved herself willing to learn and work hard. Afternoons she spent in the library, reading vampire history and lore, trying to understand Draven's world. Evenings belonged to Draven himself, long conversations over dinner, walks through the gardens behind the inn, quiet moments by the fire where they simply enjoyed each other's presence. The connection between them deepened with each passing day. Diana found herself thinking about him constantly, looking forward to the moments when they'd be together. His presence calmed something in her soul while simultaneously setting her heart racing. They hadn't kissed, yet Draven seemed determined to let her set the pace, but the tension between them built like a gathering storm. A week after her arrival, Diana woke to shouting in the halls. She threw on clothes and rushed out to find vampires running toward the main entrance, Constantine among them. What's happening? She called. Vladislaus has returned with allies, Constantine said grimly. They're challenging Draven's right to rule. Stay in your rooms, Diana. This could get violent. But Diana couldn't hide while Draven faced danger. She followed Constantine down to the main hall, where she found Draven facing a group of 20 vampires, all radiating hostility. Vladislaus stood at their head, his face twisted with malice. This madness ends now, Vladislaus declared. You are unfit to rule, Draeven Volkov. You place human interests above our own. You forbid the hunt. You claim a mortal as blood call and parade her before us like she's worthy of respect. The old ways demand strength, and you have grown weak. The old ways demanded unnecessary cruelty, Draven replied, his voice carrying through the hall. I enforce laws that allow us to coexist with humanity without constant war. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. It's betrayal, another vampire shouted. You deny us our nature. I deny you the right to murder. There's a difference. Draven's eyes found Diana in the crowd, and something fierce and protective blazed in them. "Leave now, and I'll forget this insurrection. Stay, and you challenge me formally." "We challenge you," Vladislaus said. "The throne should pass to someone who remembers what it means to be vampire." "So be it." Draven began removing his jacket with deliberate movements. "Single combat or group?" Vladislaus hesitated. "Group. Of course. Cowards always prefer numbers." Draven handed his jacket to Seraphine, who'd appeared at his side. "Standard rules? First blood, submission, or death?" "Death," Vladislaus said, and the word hung in the air like a sentence. Diana's heart stopped. She pushed forward, trying to reach Draven, but Constantine caught her arm. "Don't," he whispered urgently. "You'll only distract him. He needs to focus." "They'll kill him. He's the vampire king. Have faith." The combatants spread out in a circle. Draven stood at the center, relaxed and ready, while 20 vampires surrounded him. Diana wanted to scream, to throw herself between them, but Constantine held her firm. "Begin," Seraphine said, and chaos erupted. The vampires attacked as one, moving with inhuman speed. But Draven was faster. He blurred between them, striking with precision and devastating power. A vampire lunged for his throat. Draven ducked under the attack and broke the attacker's arm with a sickening crack. Another came from behind. He spun and delivered a kick that sent them flying across the hall. But 20 against 1 was overwhelming. Draven fought brilliantly, but he was taking hits, accumulating damage. Blood shockingly red against his pale skin streamed from a cut on his temple. His shirt tore as claws raked across his back. Diana couldn't watch him die. She pulled free from Constantine and ran toward the fight. "Stop! Please stop!" "Diana, no!" Draven's moment of distraction cost him. Vladislaus struck from the side, claws aimed for Draven's heart. Time seemed to slow. Diana saw it happening, saw the killing blow coming. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, putting her body between Vladislaus and Draven. Pain exploded across her chest as claws tore through flesh. She fell, the world tilting sideways, distantly aware of Draven's roar of fury and the sounds of carnage that followed. Then he was there, gathering her into his arms, his face twisted with fear and rage. "Diana, why? Why would you do that?" "Couldn't let him kill you," she gasped, each breath agony. Blood soaked her shirt, spreading in a crimson stain. "Seraphine, get a doctor." Draven cradled her against his chest. Around them, the fight had stopped. Diana could see vampire bodies on the floor, but couldn't process whether they were dead or merely injured. "Stay with me, Diana. Please stay with me." "Love you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could think. "Even though it's crazy, I love you." "I love you too, so much." His voice broke. "Don't leave me. I just found you." Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. She felt Draven's cool tears on her face, heard him calling her name, but the world was fading. The last thing she saw was his crimson eyes, bright with grief and desperation. When Diana woke, she was in the Moonstone suite, in the enormous bed. Her chest ached, but the pain was distant, manageable. Draven sat beside her, gripping her hand, his beautiful face haggard. "You're awake," he breathed. "Thank the darkness, you're awake." "What happened?" Her voice came out rough. "You nearly died. The wounds were severe. I had to make a choice." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "I gave you my blood, not enough to turn you, but enough to accelerate your healing. You've been unconscious for 2 days." Diana processed this. Vampire blood can heal humans? In small doses, yes. Too much begins the transformation. I was very careful. His eyes searched hers. "Are you angry?" "I didn't ask permission, but you were dying, and I couldn't lose you." "I'm not angry." She squeezed his hand. "The fight. What happened after I blacked out?" His expression hardened. "I killed Vladislaus. The others surrendered. They're imprisoned in the lower catacombs awaiting trial." He touched her face gently. "You foolish, brave, incredible woman. You could have died. So could you. That's why I did it. Diana, I'm over 300 years old. I've survived countless fights. But you're mortal, fragile, precious beyond measure. You cannot throw yourself in front of claws meant for me." "Then don't put yourself in situations where claws are aimed at you." She tried to sit up, and he immediately helped, arranging pillows behind her. I meant what I said. Before I passed out. I love you, Draeven. His eyes blazed. I love you too. More than I thought possible. When I saw you fall, when I thought I might lose you. He broke off, jaw tight. I realized I would burn this world to ash if it meant keeping you safe. That's terrifying and romantic in equal measure. It's the truth. You've become everything to me in a week's time. My blood calls for you. My soul recognizes you. I am yours in ways I've never been anyone's. He leaned closer. And if you'll have me, I want to be yours for whatever time we're granted. Diana's heart soared, despite her aching body. We're from different worlds. I'm human. You're a vampire king. People will always oppose us. Let them. I've faced opposition before. None of it matters more than you. I'm still homeless and broke. I bring nothing to this relationship except complications. You bring yourself. That's everything. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I don't care about money or status or what others think. I care about the woman who traded her last coin for shelter, who cried in my presence without shame, who threw herself in front of death to save me. That's who you are, Diana Graves, and that's who I love. Tears stung her eyes. When you put it that way, how can I say no? Then say yes. Be mine. Let me be yours. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Diana pulled him down and kissed him. His lips were cool against hers, firm and gentle and perfect. The kiss deepened, slow and sweet, and Diana felt that connection between them flare into something brilliant and unbreakable. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Yes, she whispered against his mouth, I'm yours. Completely. Draeven's smile was radiant, transforming his face into something beyond beautiful. Then I am the most fortunate creature in existence. He kissed her again, and Diana lost herself in the sensation. His hands cradled her face like she was made of glass, his touch reverent despite the passion building between them. She ran her fingers through his silver-white hair, marveling at its softness. When they broke apart this time, Draeven rested his forehead against hers. You need to recover. I should let you rest. Stay with me, Diana asked. Just hold me while I sleep. Always. He slipped into the bed beside her, carefully arranging her against his chest. His cool body should have been uncomfortable, but instead, Diana felt safer than she ever had. She drifted back to sleep, listening to his unnecessary heartbeat, slow and steady beneath her ear. Over the following weeks, Diana healed, and the relationship between her and Draeven deepened into something profound. He showed her his world, the underground courts where vampires conducted business, the blood banks they used instead of hunting, the delicate political balance he maintained with both vampire factions and human authorities who knew of their existence. She showed him hers, the resilience required to survive on streets that didn't care if you lived or died, the small kindnesses that meant everything when you had nothing, the strength found in vulnerability. They were opposites in so many ways. He was ancient and powerful. She was young and still finding her strength. He commanded legions. She commanded only herself. He was immortal. She was achingly mortal. But somehow those differences created balance rather than discord. Diana continued training with Constantine, who'd become a genuine friend. She learned vampire etiquette from Seraphine, who thawed considerably once she saw how Diana made Draeven happy. She studied history and law and politics, determined to understand the world she'd become part of. The imprisoned vampires were tried according to vampire law. Most recanted their support of Vladislaus and swore new oaths of fealty to Draeven. A few refused and were exiled from the territory, forbidden from returning on pain of death. Draeven's authority, tested and proven, emerged stronger than before. 2 months after that first rainy night, Draeven called a formal court gathering. Diana, dressed in a gown Seraphine had helped her choose, deep green silk that made her skin glow and her eyes shine. Draeven wore black velvet that emphasized his otherworldly beauty, his silver hair unbound and flowing. The throne room filled with vampires from across the region, the inner council, the outer courts, allies from neighboring territories. They all watched with curious eyes as Draeven led Diana up the dais. This time, when he sat on the throne, He pulled her into his lap rather than having her sit on the arm. "I have called this gathering to make an announcement," Draven said, his voice carrying to every corner. "2 months ago, a woman walked into my establishment with nothing but a single coin and asked for shelter. I gave her that shelter, and in return, she gave me something infinitely more valuable herself. Diana Graves is my blood call, my chosen partner, and I claim her formally before this court." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but no one voiced objection. Not after what had happened to Vladislaus. "I know this is unprecedented," Draven continued, "a vampire king claiming a human. But our laws do not forbid it, and my choice is made. Diana will remain human unless she chooses otherwise. She will be accorded all the respect and protection due to my consort. Any who threaten or disrespect her answer to me personally." He stood, bringing Diana with him, presenting her to the court. "I love her. That may seem like weakness to some of you, but I've learned that loving her makes me stronger, not weaker. It reminds me why I fight not just for power, but for the possibility that different beings can coexist in peace." Constantine stepped forward and knelt. "I pledge my sword to protect the king's chosen." One by one, other vampires came forward, offering similar pledges. Not all of them. Diana could see some who watched with resentment or barely concealed disgust. But enough. More than enough. When the formal pledges ended, Draven dismissed the court and led Diana to their private chambers. She'd moved into the Moonstone suite permanently weeks ago. Once alone, he pulled her into his arms. Thank you," he murmured against her hair, "for standing beside me, for being brave enough to love me despite everything. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else." Diana pulled back to look at him. "For giving me back my coin and so much more." "That coin," Draven smiled slightly. "Do you still have it?" "Of course. It's in the drawer by the bed. Why?" He retrieved it, turning the simple metal over in his fingers. "This coin changed everything. One small piece of currency, and my entire world shifted. Fate? Perhaps, or perhaps the universe occasionally grants even immortals miracles." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Diana Graves." "I love you too, Draeven Volkov." They stood together in the candlelight, vampire and human, king and formerly homeless woman, two souls that had found each other against impossible odds. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, unaware that in a shadowy inn, a love story was unfolding that would change vampire politics forever. The months that followed brought challenges. There were vampires who never accepted Diana, who saw her as a stain on their proud culture. There were humans who feared her association with vampires, who whispered that she must be enslaved or enchanted. Diana faced both with quiet dignity, never backing down, never apologizing for loving Draven. She became an unexpected bridge between the two worlds. Humans who would never approach the Vampire King directly brought their concerns to Diana. Vampires who struggled with Draven's progressive laws found in Diana someone willing to listen and explain. She had a gift for seeing both sides, for finding common ground. Draven watched her navigate his complicated world with a mixture of pride and wonder. She'd grown from the desperate woman with a single coin into someone confident and capable, someone who could stand in a throne room full of immortal predators and command respect through sheer force of character. One evening, a year after they'd met, Draven brought Diana back to the exact spot where she'd first entered the inn. Rain fell in sheets outside, just like that first night, and the candles cast the same dancing shadows. "A year ago you stood here ready to trade your last coin for a night's shelter," he said softly. "Do you remember?" "I remember everything about that night, how scared I was, how desperate, how you appeared like something from a dream. I gave you back that coin and all the money in your pocket. Do you know why?" Diana tilted her head. "You said you saw something worth protecting." "I saw my future. I didn't understand it then, how could I? But some part of me recognized you immediately. My blood called to yours. My soul recognized its match." He took both her hands. "This year with you has been the best of my very long life. You've made me remember why immortality is a gift rather than a curse. You've shown me that strength comes in many forms. You've loved me despite my darkness. Your darkness is part of you. I love all of you." Draven sank to one knee, and Diana's breath caught. He produced a ring-white gold set with a stone that seemed to capture moonlight, surrounded by smaller diamonds that sparkled like stars. Diana Graves, I am asking you to be my wife, to stand beside me not just as my blood call or my consort, but as my equal and my partner. I'm asking you to share your mortal life with me, and when the time comes that you're ready, I'm asking you to consider sharing immortal life as well. But that choice is always yours. Mortal or vampire, I love you completely. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Diana's face. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, because of course he'd known her size and stood to kiss her. Diana melted into him, into the kiss, into the promise of forever they were making to each other. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. Draven spun her in a circle, her feet leaving the floor, and Diana felt light enough to fly. I can't believe this is my life, she said when he set her down. A year ago I had nothing. Now I have everything. We have everything, Draven corrected. You gave me what centuries couldn't: purpose, joy, love. We made this together. Planning a wedding between a vampire king and a human woman proved complicated, but exhilarating. They decided on a twilight ceremony in the gardens behind the inn, timed so that the last rays of sunlight would fade just as the vows began, allowing Draven to stand comfortably. Vampires and humans would both attend the first mixed gathering of its kind in the region. The ceremony took place on a perfect autumn evening, 3 months after the proposal. The gardens had been transformed into something magical, thousands of candles in crystal holders, flowers in deep purples and blues, an archway woven from silver branches. Chairs held both vampire and human guests, the two groups mingling cautiously but genuinely. Diana walked down the aisle alone. She had no family left, but she didn't feel alone. Constantine offered to escort her, and she accepted gratefully, taking the warrior vampire's arm with genuine affection. She wore white silk that flowed like water, her hair loose and crowned with a circlet of silver leaves. She'd never felt more beautiful. Draven waited at the altar in black velvet, his silver hair catching the candlelight, his crimson eyes locked on her. The love in his gaze took her breath away. She'd seen him command armies, face down challengers, rule with absolute authority. But in this moment, he was simply hers, and she was his. The ceremony blended vampire and human traditions. They exchanged rings and vows, and then performed the vampire ritual of blood, binding a small cut on each palm, their blood mingling as they clasped hands. It was symbolic rather than transformative, a promise that their lives were woven together. By blood and bone, by choice and love, I bind myself to you, Draven said, the ancient words resonating with power. Your joys are mine, your sorrows are mine. I will stand with you against all darkness. By blood and bone, by choice and love, I bind myself to you, Diana repeated. Your burdens are mine, your triumphs are mine. I will stand with you through all time granted to us. The efficient, an ancient vampire who'd performed such ceremonies for centuries, smiled. Then, by the authority of the old laws and the new, I declare you bound in marriage. You may seal your vows. Draven pulled Diana into a kiss that felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure at the same time. The gathered crowd erupted in applause, vampire and human alike celebrating this unprecedented union. The reception lasted until dawn. Diana danced with vampires and humans, accepting congratulations and well wishes from beings both mortal and immortal. Draven never left her side for long, always finding his way back to her as if pulled by invisible strings. As the first hints of sunrise began to lighten the sky, Draven whisked Diana away to their chambers. They made love slowly and tenderly, learning each other's bodies with reverent attention. His cool skin against her warm flesh created delicious contrasts. His strength, carefully controlled, made her feel cherished rather than fragile. Her trust in him, complete and unwavering, allowed him to be vulnerable in ways he'd never permitted himself before. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Diana's head on Draven's chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "More than I knew was possible." "You?" "I didn't know I could feel this way. For so long, I thought love was something other people experienced, that I'd lived too long and seen too much to open myself to it. You proved me wrong." Diana traced patterns on his chest. "I need to ask you something about becoming a vampire." She felt him tense slightly. "You don't have to decide that for years, decades even. We have time." "I know. But I want you to know I've thought about it, and I think eventually I'll want to turn. Not now, I'm not ready. But someday when I've lived enough of a mortal life, when I'm ready to walk beside you for centuries instead of just decades, I want that future with you." Draven was quiet for a long moment. "You're certain? Immortality isn't romantic. It's watching everyone you know die, seeing civilizations rise and fall, carrying the weight of all those years. I'll be carrying it with you. That makes all the difference." She raised her head to look at him. "I don't want to leave you alone again. Maybe that's selfish, but it's true." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "It's not selfish. It's the most generous thing anyone has ever offered me. When you're ready, Diana, not before. And if you change your mind, I'll love you just as fiercely for whatever time we have. I won't change my mind. You're it for me, Draeven Volkov, forever." "Forever," he echoed, and kissed her as if sealing a sacred vow. Years passed in a rhythm of joy and purpose. Diana threw herself into the work of bridging vampire and human worlds. She founded programs that helped homeless humans, using her own experience to create shelters that actually worked, that treated people with dignity. Draven supported her completely, providing funding and resources. She also worked within the vampire community, helping younger vampires adapt to Draven's laws about coexistence. She had a gift for explaining why the old ways of hunting and killing no longer served them, why partnership with humanity made them stronger rather than weaker. There were still opponents, of course, still vampires who thought humans were beneath them, still humans who feared and hated all vampires. But slowly, steadily, Diana and Draven's example shifted perceptions. Other vampire lords began adopting similar laws. Human authorities became more willing to work with vampire leaders. On their 5th anniversary, Diana and Draven hosted a summit vampire lords from across the continent, gathering to discuss unified laws protecting both species. It was unprecedented, historic, and it succeeded largely because of Diana's diplomatic skills and Draven's unwavering support. On their 10th anniversary, Diana told Draven she was ready to turn. They chose to do it on the anniversary of the night they met, coming full circle. The ceremony was private, just the two of them in the Moonstone suite where this had all begun. Draven had explained the process carefully. His blood would transform her over 3 nights, death and rebirth wrapped into one. "Are you certain?" he asked one final time. "There's no going back from this." Diana took his hands. "I've never been more certain of anything. I'm ready to spend eternity with you." The transformation was agony and ecstasy intertwined. Diana felt her human life burning away, replaced by something sharper and stronger and infinitely more intense. Draven stayed with her through every moment, his voice anchoring her when the pain threatened to sweep her away, his presence a constant reminder of why she'd chosen this. On the 3rd night, Diana woke to a world transformed. Every sense was heightened beyond imagination. She could hear heartbeats from rooms away, smell the individual scents of every person in the building, see in perfect detail, even in near total darkness. And the hunger. Oh, the hunger was immense, but stronger than the hunger was the blood bond between her and Draven, now magnified 1,000-fold. She could feel his presence like a second heartbeat, sense his emotions as clearly as her own. When she looked at him with her new crimson eyes, she saw him truly for the first time, all his power and grace and terrible beauty laid bare. "Hello, my love," he said, smiling. "Welcome to immortality." Diana looked in the mirror and saw her transformation. Her skin had paled to that distinctive vampire white, luminous and flawless. Her hair had lightened to silver blonde, not as pure white as Draven's, but close. Her features had sharpened, becoming more angular and otherworldly. She looked like herself, but elevated, perfected. "I'm beautiful," she whispered, awed. "You always were. Now others can see it clearly." Draven came to stand behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. In the mirror, they looked like a matched set, 2 immortals bound by blood and choice and love. The first year of vampirehood was challenging. Diana had to learn to control her new strength, to manage the hunger, to navigate a body that worked according to different rules. Draven taught her everything, patient and supportive even when she struggled. Constantine helped with combat training now that she had vampire speed and power. Seraphine taught her the subtle arts of vampire politics. By their 15th anniversary, Diana had grown into her immortality. She was still herself, still kind, still driven to help others, still quick to laugh. But now she had the power to back up her compassion. She could defend the weak, challenge the corrupt, stand as a true equal beside her husband. Together, they transformed the Eastern Seaboard's vampire society. The old ways of fear and domination gave way to cooperation and mutual benefit. Human-vampire partnerships became common in business and politics. Mixed gatherings like their wedding became regular occurrences. Not everyone was happy with the changes. There were still holdouts, still traditionalists who longed for the days of vampire supremacy. But Diana and Draven faced them together, united and unshakable. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to where it all began. The Crimson Haven Inn still stood, still serving as a bridge between their world and the human one. But now it also stood as a symbol proof that the impossible could become reality with courage and love. They stood in the main hall, where Diana had first offered her coin to Seraphine, where Draven had first seen her and known she was his destiny. "Do you remember?" Diana asked, leaning against her husband. "Every detail. How you looked soaked and desperate but proud. How you held out that coin like it was everything. How my world shifted the moment I caught your scent." Draven pulled her close. "Best investment I ever made, returning that money. You gave me so much more than money. You gave me a home, a purpose, love, a future that stretches out for centuries." Diana turned in his arms. "I was ready to trade my last coin for one night of shelter. Instead, I got forever." "We got forever," Draven corrected. "I was existing before you, Diana. You taught me how to live." They kissed there in the empty hall, two immortals bound by a love that had started with a single coin and a desperate woman's courage. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, humans and vampires coexisting in an uneasy but functional peace. And in the Crimson Haven Inn, the vampire king and his queen held each other and marveled at the beautiful impossibility of their life together. Years turned to decades. Diana and Draven became legends in vampire society, the king who'd chosen love over tradition, and the human who'd become his immortal queen. Their story was told in vampire courts across the world, inspiring others to look beyond old prejudices. They traveled extensively, visiting other vampire territories, establishing alliances, and spreading their message of coexistence. They saw wonders, together ancient vampire cities hidden beneath Rome and Cairo, vampire art collections spanning millennia, gatherings where immortals shared stories stretching back thousands of years. But they always returned to the Crimson Haven Inn, to the place where their story had begun. It remained their true home, the anchor point for all their adventures. 50 years after that rainy night, they held a celebration at the inn. Vampires and humans filled the halls, friends they'd made over the decades, allies they'd won, lives they'd touched. Constantine, now Draven's second in command, gave a toast that had the whole room laughing. Seraphine, who'd become one of Diana's closest friends, presented them with a painting she'd commissioned Diana and Draven on their wedding night, immortalized in oils. As the party wound down and guests departed, Diana and Draven climbed to the roof of the inn, a private space they'd claimed as their own years ago. They sat together watching the city lights, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other completely. "Do you ever regret it?" Draven asked. "Giving up your mortal life?" "Not once. Do you regret turning me? My only regret is that you suffered during the transformation. But the result?" He kissed her temple. "I thank whatever fate brought you to my door every day of my existence." Diana leaned into him, marveling, as she still sometimes did, at the sheer unlikeliness of their life. She'd been a homeless woman with nothing but a coin and desperate hope. He'd been an immortal king who'd forgotten what it meant to feel deeply. Together, they'd built something beautiful and lasting. "I love you," she said simply, "for giving me back my coin, for giving me back my life, for giving me everything. I love you for accepting what I offered, for being brave enough to trust a vampire, for choosing me again and again across the years." Draven pulled her closer. "You traded your last coin for shelter. I gave you a kingdom. I think we both made excellent bargains." Diana laughed, the sound carrying across the rooftop. "The best bargain in history." They sat together as the night deepened, two immortals wrapped in each other and in the love that had changed both their worlds. Below them, the Crimson Haven Inn stood strong, a beacon for anyone seeking shelter from the storm. And somewhere in its vaults, in a place of honor, sat a single tarnished coin, the coin that had started everything, preserved as a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures of faith and kindness could reshape destiny itself. The rain began to fall, gentle and cleansing, and Diana and Draven remained on the roof, letting it wash over them. It reminded them both of that first night, of desperate chances taken and impossible connections made. They'd come so far from that rainy evening when a woman with nothing had walked into a vampire's establishment seeking warmth. Now they had everything: love, purpose, immortality, and each other. The coin had been traded for so much more than shelter. It had purchased forever, and neither of them would ever regret the bargain they'd made. As the rain fell and the city slept, and the years stretched out before them like an endless road, Diana and Draven held each other and knew with perfect certainty that they were exactly where they belonged. Together. Always together. For all the centuries yet to come. Their story had begun with an ending, the end of Diana's mortal life, the end of Draven's isolation. But from that ending had come a beginning more beautiful than either had imagined possible. A beginning that would never end. A love that would transcend time itself, a bond forged in darkness and sealed in eternal light. The vampire king and his queen, the homeless woman and her immortal love, two halves of one soul, finally whole, finally home, finally and forever together.